Hello everyone, you have come to Tata Comic Preview channel. Let read together. Have fun. This is an art collage novel video. I made this series so you guys can experience the story faster. The video will focus on the character's psychology, the images are for illustration purposes only. Zhou was puzzled. What are all these monks doing here? Apart from Zhou Jifeng and Pan Zhong, his disciples and the other old men were not present on the scene. Greetings, Benefactor Ji. The monks bowed in unison. Zhou remained silent as he waited for Su Jing's explanation. Su Jing said, "The Heaven Choice Temple has recruited 2,000 new disciples. I've called them over as reinforcements, but the battle had already ended when they arrived. However, they arrived just in time to help with the clearing of the corpses. We're fortunate to have accomplished what was entrusted to us. The foot of the mountain is now cleared." Zhou nodded when he heard this. He was pleased. It was not a bad thing to have them help out around these parts. He replied curtly, "I see." Su Jing seemed embarrassed as he said, "However, many trees and plants near the foot of the mountain are half withered. I've tried the merciful ark of salvation, but it did not help." The withering of the plants was within Zhou's expectations. Fortunately, the purple mist had been quickly dispersed. Otherwise, all the plants on Golden Court Mountain would wither and the mountain would be barren. He was deep in thoughts at this moment. He finally decided to restore the barrier should the chance presented itself. Without the barrier, the defenses of Golden Court Mountain were too weak. Su Jing said, "Benefactor Ji, the Buddhist prayer beads are too precious of a gift. I can't take it without earning it. Kindly take it back, Benefactor Ji." He removed the prayer beads from around his neck and respectfully presented them to Zhou with both hands. Zhou glanced at the Buddhist prayer beads. Was any of his disciples thinking of becoming a monk? Who should I give this to if not a monk? Finally, he said, "I've never liked monks, but your performance is worthy of praise. Since I've given you the prayer beads, I won't take them back." Su Jing was slightly taken aback by this. When he received the prayer beads yesterday, he thought it was a ploy by the evil Sky Pavilion to temporarily bribe them for their help. He did not expect to keep it. When he heard Zhou's words, a contrite expression appeared on his face. His benefactor had sincerely offered him a gift, and yet, he had questioned the benefactor's motives. "I'm ashamed of myself." Was this the bearing and thoughts worthy of an erudite monk? Su Jing was so ashamed he wished the ground would open up and swallow him. Zhou, who did not spare any thoughts to his matter, was rather speechless when he looked at Su Jing. He finally understood why his disciples greatly disliked those on the noble path. The people on the noble path assumed too much and thought too highly of themselves. "I'm just giving you the prayer beads because you've been of help to me. Moreover, the prayer beads aren't worth much." To each his own. Su Jing wore the prayer beads around his neck. He lifted his monk robes and kowtowed piously. "On behalf of the Heaven Choice Temple, I thank you, Benefactor Ji." Su Jing's disciples, naturally, could not stand by idly when their master was kowtowing. They kowtowed at Zhou as well. Ding. Received a genuine kowtow from 1,020 individuals. Reward, 10,200 merit points. Zhou was surprised to hear this notification. He suddenly remembered that Su Jing mentioned something about the Heaven Choice Temple having many new disciples. A repeated kowtow would not give him any points. The arrival of 1,020 new disciples was a pleasant surprise. Zhou suddenly felt that it was a good decision to have given the Buddhist prayer beads to Su Jing. However, the Heaven Choice Temple was reborn with the evil Sky Pavilion's help and was different from the other sections. He could not possibly expect the others to kowtow at him genuinely just because he gave them something. Over the next 2 weeks, Su Jing insisted on staying to show his gratitude. He thoroughly cleaned the evil Sky Pavilion. Apart from the withered plants at the foot of the mountain, which they could not do anything about, everything was tidied up by the monks. Even the steps were spotless. Early one day, Zhou had just finished meditating on the heavenly writing scrolls. At this moment, Ming Shirin entered the eastern pavilion with a letter in his hand. He bowed, clearly irritable, as he said, "Master, a letter from Zhenghai Jian." Lu Zhou could sense the annoyance in Ming Shirin's tone, but he did pay him any mind. "Read it." Ming Shirin opened the letter and read, "Old Senior, has the evil sky pavilion been trampled by a minor witchcraft cultivator? What's the situation? The major sects of the cultivation world are talking about how half of Golden Court Mountain withered overnight. This isn't good news." When he read this, Ming Shirin muttered to himself, "Excuse me, we crushed them." "Go on." Lu Zhou's voice remained calm. Ming Shirin did not dally. He continued to read aloud, "I must remind you that you should be wary of the alliances between the sects on the noble path. Also, I have an important piece of information. Ba Ma's death has reached Lulan. The royals of Lulan are infuriated. They sent several hundred cultivators to Roli Nation for an alliance. Where do you think they're headed? I'll clobber this long-winded fellow the next time I see him," Ming Shirin thought to himself before he continued to read the letter. They went to Liang province. Coincidentally, your first and seventh disciples are headed north. See, Wuya's information network in Great Yen is wider than mine, but in the other tribes and Lulan, he's no match for me. After reading that, Ming Shirin said, "Master, shall we summon Jiang Aijian here? I don't think he made himself very clear." "No need." Lu Zhou walked out of the eastern pavilion. He stroked his beard, lost in thoughts. Great Yen had defeated Lulan many times. In the recent exchange, Lulan even had to offer one of their princesses for a marriage alliance. The marriage alliance was, naturally, a good thing. However, nobody expected that Emily would go so far as to turn into a woman and become the consort of Lu Huan, the second prince. Clearly, she had planned to infiltrate Great Yen and take it down from inside. Now that Emily and Ba Ma were dead, how could Lulan not be furious? Back then, Ji Tiandao had lived through the period where Great Yen was in conflict with the other tribes. However, he rarely involved himself in those affairs. "Master, I suspect that Lulan and Roli are trying to invade Liang province with this opportunity. Jiang Aijian is a prince, after all. This is their matter," Ming Shirin said. After Lu Gu ascended the throne, he neglected to manage the empire. Even when the second prince died, he didn't make a move. "I don't think things are as simple as you think they are," Lu Zhou replied. "If that's the case, isn't eldest senior brother just exposing his back to his enemies?" Ming Shirin asked. Lu Zhou glanced at him. Upon hearing that, Ming Shirin realized he had said the wrong thing. He hastily added, "Oh, right, he deserves it. If they're defeated, it'll be the perfect opportunity to capture and interrogate them." "Are you trying to decide my matters for me?" Lu Zhou asked. "I dare not." Lu Zhou no longer spoke. He decided to just go with the flow. Clearly, there was something amiss with how Lu Gu seemed unbothered with the affairs of the world. In that case, what was the imperial family waiting for? Send word to Jiang Aijian. Tell him to investigate the imperial family's research on the nine-leaf stage. "Yes, master." Tell him that I'll take back Dragon Song and the demon sword if he refuses to cooperate. "That's great." Yes, master." Ming Shirin bowed. Lu Zhou nodded and said, "I'll check on Pan Litian and Lang Luo. I'll leave the rest to you. If there's nothing urgent, there's no need to report to me." "Yes, master." Ming Shirin bowed again. On Brackish Mountain in the snow-covered northern borders. The cold spring wind blew, and yet, everything was quiet in the Melilot graveyard. It remained unaffected by the roaring of the wind. Whiz. Yu Shangrong summoned a miniature 100 Tribulations Insight avatar on his palm. He shook his head as he looked at it. 2/3 of the golden lotus was now covered in purple spots. He could early feel his avatar had lost more than half of its strength. Moreover, the purple spots were still continuing to spread. Yu Shangrong sighed softly. "This is my fate. I started with the Melilot, and I'll end with the Melilot. brackish mountain was usually shrouded in darkness. Without knowing when it began, it never stopped snowing as well. In a snowy land that had lost sunlight along with the biting cold, it was difficult for people to be compelled by the scenery. The cold wind entered the graveyard through the only opening on the ceiling. It howled like a war horn. At the same time, it sounded as though the bones in the Melilot graveyard were lamenting their fates and lives that were filled with regrets. Everyone in the nobleman nation sought longevity. They wanted to go against the heavens, change their fates, and break the bonds of their shackles. Now, everything laid in ruins. Yu Shangrong sometimes wondered why the heavens treated them differently when they were all humans. He left this place in his youth to change his fate. With his mortal legs, he traversed the lands, ventured through dangerous forests, and cultivated. He was finally at the peak of human cultivation. He would be lying if he said that he did not feel wronged in the slightest. Woo. The wind's howling intensified. It pulled Yu Shangrong back from his thoughts. He rose to his feet and surveyed his surroundings. He looked at the ingenious design of the graveyard and shook his head. He looked at the wall on which the word longevity was carved. He felt slightly emotional. Clack. With a crisp sound, the characters moved. A contraption? Several dozen projectiles shot from the walls to the sides. Yu Shangrong did not even have to use his primal chi. He only needed his protective energy to keep the projectiles at bay. They were weak projectiles. They were arrowheads forged by the hands of men. They were refined, solid, compact, and exquisite. They were truly works of art, and yet, they could do nothing against cultivators. The projectiles fell harmlessly to the ground. A hidden bracket appeared on the wall. Without hesitation, Yu Shangrong pressed it. The second stone door slowly slid open, revealing a round space. The lighting in this room was better than the previous one. However, the howling of the wind was still audible. His ears were growing accustomed to the humming sound. There was a round stone table in the center of the round room. A brocade box rested on the table. The box was surrounded by withered melilots. Perhaps, it was due to the passing of time, the melilots only left behind vague outlines. The physical bodies had rotted away long ago. Yu Shangrong waved his sleeve softly. The melilots and dust scattered. He looked at the brocade box. Petals of a melilot decorated the lid of the box. He did not think much about it and waved his arm again. Click. The brocaded box opened, revealing several books and pills. Yu Shangrong picked the books up and casually flipped through them. There was nothing special about the books. They were the cultivation methods of the Buddhist, Taoist, and Confucian sections. Indeed, they would be considered treasures for ordinary people. However, for Yu Shangrong, they were nothing but a pile of useless paper. He would not even deign to look at them twice. Some primal chi surged in his palm, and the books were reduced to ashes. As for the pills, after all this time, their effects had certainly deteriorated. Judging from the shapes of the pills, these pills should have been low-grade longevity pills. Like the books, they were not much use to him. These were indeed precious items to the people of the nobleman country in the past. He did not expect them to be placed inside the Melilot graveyard. Did nobody cultivate or consume these? Yu Shangrong sighed softly and smacked his palm down. Bam! The brocade box fell to the ground. Suddenly, a strange item that looked like a painting fell from the bottom of the brocade box. Yu Shangrong shifted his gaze toward the painting. To be more precise, it was a sheet of paper with various symbols. He suddenly recalled the paper and mission his master entrusted to him. The symbols on the paper he was given seemed to match those on this sheet of paper. He took out the paper that his master had given and laid it next to the sheet of paper to compare them. Many of the symbols were similar, there was a handful that was complete matches. There were more symbols on the sheet he found. Clearly, the contents on the two sheets of paper were different, but they had been written in the same style. Does this belong to master? Yu Shangrong was curious. Why was his master's possession here? He did not think that the other items were precious, but he guessed this sheet had to be very precious. Yu Shangrong studied the symbols on the paper, but he could not understand any of them. In the end, he gave up trying to make sense of it. Then, he folded it carefully and placed it inside his pocket. The fact that it survived the years quietly inside this box without being affected by the weather proved that the material of this sheet of paper was extraordinary as well. After that, Yu Shangrong turned to look at the stone door. Should I head back? Then, he walked out of the second stone door. The howling of the wind intensified. Yu Shangrong felt that something was amiss. He raised a hand, and his 100 Tribulations Insight avatar appeared. His golden lotus was still tainted by the purple curse. Won't it go away? Yu Shangrong frowned slightly. If his avatar was fine, he would be able to return to the Evil Sky Pavilion in 7 days if he flew at full speed. However, at the moment, he was sure that his avatar would fall apart halfway through his journey. There were many beasts in the wilderness. He would become their prey if he was not careful. Without his avatar, his cultivation base was only equivalent to a 9-fold body tempering cultivator. He could handle manual labor, but he could not hasten his journey and pass through dangerous forests. He did not think that he could count on having the same luck he had in his youth. When he thought about this, Yu Shangrong stopped. He did not intend to break the door. He crossed his legs and sat down. Then, he circulated his primal qi to suppress the erosion of the purple curse. He adjusted his breathing as he entered a meditative state. The entire day passed in just a blink of an eye. If it were not for the source of light from the Melilot graveyard ceiling, it would be difficult to tell that it was already bright outside. Yu Shangrong summoned his 100 Tribulations Insight avatar again. Indeed, the spread of the purple spots had slowed. However, this suppression was merely delaying the spread of this poison, it was not a cure. He could not allow this to drag on. Yu Shangrong had been searching for a way to overcome this throughout the night. Yet, he could not stop the erosion of this curse. As the sword devil who remained undefeatable in the cultivation world over the years, this was his first time feeling powerless and helpless. Yu Shangrong stood up and passed through the second stone door. He sat down with his legs crossed again to adjust his breathing while he tried to come up with something. On the 5th day, Yu Shangrong summoned his avatar again. The golden lotus of his 100 Tribulations Insight avatar was almost completely tainted. Perhaps, it was due to the pressure of his golden lotus's imminent destruction by the curse. A sudden and terrifying thought came to Yu Shangrong's mind unbidden. Sever the golden lotus. He knew the consequences of that act. This was because he did the exact same thing to countless other avatars with his longevity sword before. Fiend Zen avatars, Daoist avatars, Confucian heavenly energy avatars, Buddha golden bodies. Regardless of the avatar, when they were cut by a heaven-grade weapon, the cultivator would be gravely injured. Cutting off his golden lotus was akin to committing suicide. Yu Shangrong was surprised to find his fingers trembling. He tightened his grip on the scabbard of the longevity sword. The sword devil of the generation was clearly nervous.